Thank you very much, Dominic. That's wonderful. I'm going to stay with those images of 2050 and the beavers, definitely. So I definitely shouldn't have my hand up. I don't know why I've got my hand up, but there you go. Yes, so we've got time for some questions, and we've got about 10, maybe 12 minutes for anybody who would like to ask a question of any of our speakers. May still be digesting all that information, but if you do have a question, please feel free to put your virtual hand up from the reactions button, and we'll try and take you in order. So let's have a question from Ken. Hello, Ken, and if you could say who the question's for, and then go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, forgive me. I think this might be for Ian or Simon. As a parish council, I'm just interested if they can give some examples of what parish councils have been able to do, if they have any.
Thank you,
Ken. I'll jump in. Thanks, Ken. It's a good question. So the two examples that I put, I mentioned briefly on my presentation, the River Asker is a parish council-led project, and we approached them to say, look, the river's classified as poor in this condition. Should we do something about it? And they were very happy to support that. So we've put a bit of time and effort to trying to develop a community action plan and then deliver on that, which has revolved around citizen science and a bit of habitat creation, and then also some working with landowners to try and change practices there. But during the course of that project, we had some well-attended talks over the winter several years ago, and one of the outputs there was around fish passage and trying to improve fish passage was a priority for that community. So we're working with the West Country Rivers Trust there to look at some of the barriers and what we can do about it. So we were proactive in approaching Asker's parish. It was the other way around for the Char Valley Parish Council contacted us and said, look, we've seen what you've been doing in the Asker, can you help us? And so very proactive group of councillors, got a very clear idea of what they want to do, and myself from the Dorset AONB and the Wildlife Trust and Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group support them to deliver some of that nature-based solution kind of angle to it. So it's delivering again on their climate and ecological emergencies. But I'm happy to have a conversation offline, Ken, and point you in the direction of some other people that are in North Dorset that might be able to help. But there's, I think, some of the examples that we talked about or have been shown here are quite ambitious, which is great. But actually, the starting point doesn't need to be as ambitious. So I think it's important to just start doing something, and that doesn't also have to be expensive. And I think data is one of the key areas that people can really help with. I showed some graphs of the invertebrate monitoring, which I think is a key. A very good way of looking at the health of rivers, but the Environment Agency only do it at one spot on a river very sporadically and make quite a lot of judgments based on that monitoring data, and actually local people can fill in the gaps and help create a much more nuanced picture, and that's a really good starting point. But anyway, I've talked too much. Don't know if anybody else has got anything to say.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, I think I would chip in there. So I too am I'm a town councillor here in Bude, and a lot of this stuff doesn't fall under the direct remit of town or parish councils, but it's fairly easy, he says, at that level to have policies that recognise the importance of catchment management and talking to landowners and kind of working together with other agencies across the different scales. So if you're a parish council that's that has the boundaries of one part of the river, finding out who your upstream parishes are and downstream parishes, and whether you have parishes that are kind of contributing different terms of land use, then kind of working together at those scales can be really useful. A lot of the volunteer monitoring schemes we're talking about don't cost very much to get up and running. Obviously they mainly need people, enthusiastic people, but the kind of money that we are talking about is usually well within the budgets of town and parish councils. And I've seen lots of groups get up and running with the CSI scheme, West Country CSI scheme, and Riverfly with funding from those councils. So yeah, it's difficult for councils to directly get involved, but they can certainly support people in their parishes who are, and kind of recognise the importance of these issues in their kind of policies, I would say.
Thank you,
thanks, Jen.
Simon. Thanks, Ken. Question. Any other questions? Brewing, Brood. Kim Cresswell? Yeah. You unmute. You're muted at the moment.
Just trying to work out how this Zoom thing works. Yeah, so my question is, I'm wondering if anyone can give advice on when you think there are problems with agricultural runoff, but all the agricultural people are actually following DEFRA guidelines and are therefore saying we are following DEFRA guidelines, there's nothing more we can do. But those DEFRA guidelines are obviously generic and not concentrated on the area where you live. That seems to be the end of the conversation. Does anyone have any advice as to how to further that conversation to actually make some positive changes when actually you're suggesting things which are going against DEFRA advice?
Anybody want to answer that? Simon, Ian, Dominic?
I'll start again. Kim, whereabouts are you? Just for a bit of context.
We are near Sherborne.
Okay. I think the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group are a good, well-respected organisation in Dorset, and they're a partnership with us on the Dorset Wild Rivers. So it might be worth having a conversation with them to see what's going on. Sorry, I can't.
You're muted, Kim.
No luck with them.
I've spoken to them. Yeah, no joy, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a difference between kind of rule breaking, where there's in theory enforcement that can follow, and the softly advice. You know, what we do in the West Dorset Rivers kind of areas is kind of offer alternative advice and look at farm economics and different ways of managing the land. But it can't be foisted upon people. It's a voluntary approach, and it's about having people on the ground. And I know the Wildlife Trust have good representatives in the West Dorset, but I'm not sure that there's as much capacity in the north of Dorset to have those people on the ground. But it's about having regular, often conversations and trying to change people bit by bit. And you know, now is a good time because fertilizer prices are through the roof, and the war in Ukraine has changed things significantly in terms of markets as well. So farmers should be looking at how they do things differently, and one way of doing that is more extensively and more sympathetically with the land. But there's no hard and fast, you know, if they're following best practice, which, you know, isn't necessarily the strongest, as you find out, there's very little you can do other than keep having those conversations, and FWAG should be having those conversations in that part of the county and the Wildlife Trust, but possibly not at the density that you need to make change happen.
Thank you, Ian. That's great. So, did you want to add something, Simon, there, or Dominic?
Well, yeah, I mean, echo what Ian says. It's really difficult. You know, if farmers are, and as we see nationally and both locally to you, farming is undoubtedly a big impact on rivers. It's difficult because they, you know, the sort of the encouragement for farmers to kind of farm in a more sensitive manner is very kind of lukewarm. I would say though, it's if you're having a conversation with the farming community, that's brilliant. I would try and keep that as wide as possible and try and kind of raise that community level of awareness about issues. And you know, something like, if you have a look at the West Country CSI survey, it's pretty good in that sense that it leaves room for logging issues to do with waste treatment, urban runoff, farming, all those kind of things. So it's not looking to blame any one sector. It's gathering kind of objective data on what the issue is, and just try and raise that up the kind of the local conversation in as kind of objective way as possible, I think, so that so that farmers then start to realize the part they have to play in river health. I'd also just, you know, you kind of say that you think farming, what's the evidence that you think you have? Is that kind of observed pollution events, or is it general sort of sedimentation? Because that might make a difference as to what the problem is.
So we've pinpointed the problem as topsoil erosion and also agrochemical runoff. Yeah. And then there's
Oh,
the kind of buffer strips have grown less, the intensification of agriculture, everyone's worried about their bottom line. So, you know, everything's being squeezed. So we are trying to have that conversation, but what the response we get is we're following DEFRA guidelines, there's nothing more to say.
So they have recently increased the rewards for farmers to kind of, you know, put into place buffer strips and for fencing and things like that. I think in the new year that doubled, which still doesn't mean it's not that lucrative. And if farmers are dead set against it, then it's not enough to kind of get them doing it. But if you do have any who are kind of that way inclined, then, you know, getting them to look again at the payments for those things might help. And perhaps even if you target, you know, buffer strips, for example, have lots of other benefits around wildlife connectivity. So yeah, trying to keep it as kind of the solutions as broad as possible, because we know that, you know, anything you can do to kind of renaturalize a landscape, even small parts of it, can make a big difference. And trying to keep that focused on the bits that, you know, on the farmers who are half on side, because I think they tend to listen to other farmers rather than, you know, incomers who are kind of got to be in their bonnet. So if you can get one on board, then that might be a good start. But yeah, it's difficult, and in a lot of ways we're trying to kind of shift the goalposts or shift the landscape so that DEFRA and the government kind of properly incentivize or either properly enforce kind of best practice and improve that. But at the moment we're not really there. So anything you can do to kind of add weight to that evidence that farming is the issue it is, I think will help in the long run, hopefully.
Thank you, Simon. This is such an important issue, and I'd like to ask Dominic as well if you have something to add in terms of your relationship with the farming community around the Culm, because I think it's so crucial to the whole Dorset scene.
Yes, I mean, I think Simon spoke and Ian both very wisely there and picked up on a lot of the points I was going to make. I think that having positive uplifting conversations with people and trying to get a focus on what we could do is really the way to go, rather than allowing it to go into sort of polarizing negativity. Well, I think that can be really hard to do as well. Our experience with working with farmers is, it's been a long, slow process. We've been able to have farm advisors to go out there and I think, talk to FWAG, talk to others who might be in the community, working in your patch, who might be able to engage, and getting some farmers who are, looking after nature better, to be the people, to be the ambassadors for the change. And maybe, if you can offer as a community to roll up your sleeves and help plant the trees or to create the buffer, if there's anything you can do on that scale to make a difference, that's also useful. But I mean, I really agree, it is challenging, it's not simple, and for farmers they just revert to, this is my livelihood, and if they're not blatantly breaking the rules, then it's very hard to get through that. I mean, I guess if you were sampling, if you were doing some CSI type monitoring in your river, that also might kind of help make the case that actually, it's not great down here. It's but I think what Vicky and Co on the River Kit are doing is trying to build, and I'm sure she and Paul will talk about this in a minute, trying to build these relationships with local landowners, try and foster these conversations, because it's a long, slow process.
Thank you very much, Dominic. That's great. And it's great to have heard from all three in terms of that information. Colin, may I hold your question till, have you got a question still?
I've got a question, but I could see you hankering to get on.
I'm hankering to get on, but I'd like to let the rivers speak, and then we will have more question time. But otherwise, if you want to put your question in the chat, and afterwards, I forgot to say, when we finish, there'll be a virtual pub for another half hour if anybody wants to talk to each other in breakout rooms or just stay around for a bit. But for now, I am going to move on to give each river the 3 minutes that has long been promised. And I'm going to change the order just to make sure that everybody's still awake and on your toes. And actually, I'm going to ask if the River Winniford would speak first, just because I know that Sarah needs to be off. There you are, Sarah. Hello. Would you open the riverbed for us?
Yes, hello everybody. Yeah, we're a very, very new group, so I certainly won't take 3 minutes. We basically, a group in the village of Chiddock, got together because we're concerned about the Winniford, which is actually classified by the Environment Agency as a stream, I'm pretty sure. So therefore we don't have any Environment Agency monitoring on it. We have a large caravan site towards the sea where the river comes out, and there's an adequate sewage plant there. As the caravan site's got bigger, the sewage plant hasn't. So we do have a real issue with untreated sewage, but there is no monitoring. So we really don't know. We also have issues with, as everyone else has, with runoff. So what we've done is we formed a group. We've only had one meeting, and we've decided that the priority is to do some sort of baseline data monitoring, data gathering. So that was very helpful, what Ian was talking about, the different sources of information on river quality that's already available. Then we're going to be hopefully doing the Rivers Trust, CSI and Riverfly monitoring. And that's really as far as we've got, but we're also very keen, and we hope to do a lot of community engagement as part of that. I think that's all I could say really at the moment.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much for coming along when you're busy. It's great to hear you starting off. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
And can we move on to River Char Upper, as it's called? Where's the Upper River Char? Can I see them anywhere?
River Char Upper.
There you go.
Like the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yes.
I'm honoured to represent the River Char Upper. I think one of the things you asked us 3 questions, Sandra. One was something that's worked best. We've been going for only just over a year, really. One of the things that's worked best is the range of things that we've been able to do. We've been blessed by working with Dorset AONB and Ian here, who was able to do us a baseline study that we couldn't have done ourselves, and he's also helped us with, along with Nick Gray, with walks and literature and the Riverfly testing and working parties. So a variety of things to appeal to a variety of people. The more able, the less able, people with more time, less time, whatever. And I think that's crucial. The second question is what remains a challenge, and the challenge, there are many. One is how to engage the 95% of people who are not engaged, and a particular question, which I expect everyone will resonate with to some extent, is that all of this is being done in the face of everybody's recognition that the water voles that used to be there aren't. The clouds of butterflies, the dragonflies that used to be there aren't. Just the volume, the quantities of bird life, wildlife, frog spawn, whatever it is not there. So I mean, we see the data is crucial, but our lived experience and our own memories and the memories of older family members and so on are just that everything is going in the wrong direction. And when you meet people in the community, sometimes they just say, it doesn't matter what you do, we can see that it's nothing like enough because there's a headlong deterioration. And of course, that's the picture, that's what we all face and what we're doing with trying to do in the face of climate change. So that a big question is how to engage people in the face of the knowledge that what we're doing can't ever be enough. Yeah, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for that, Upper River Char. That's great. And all of these points will be sent round at the end of the meeting. So thank you. And can we have Lower River Char Lower? Somewhere on one of these screens. Yes, Dana.
Hi, sorry, I'm on a different computer, so I'm confused.
Welcome.
usual. Yeah, so I'm part of the Lower Char group, and that was set up just over a year ago. No, yeah, just under a year ago. Started off with 5 core members, and we've got a growing membership now. And we were really inspired by the Upper Char work, and recognizing that the problem downstream is the sewage, mainly the sewage work discharged into the river and out to our coastal waters. And so we started to ask the question, what can we do to clean up the River Char, to make it, or the Lower Char, to make it a safer place for families, for pets, for visitors, because we're a tourist village, and also, most importantly, for biodiversity, to, as Andrew was saying, to bring life back to the river and back to our lives. So we started off, our main campaign is to reduce the sewage pollution that enters the river. And we started off by gathering information. So we were very much, as Sandra called us, river detectives. And we started to use our eyes and our ears and our computers to find out what was actually happening in the river, what was going into the river, what was being lost from the river. And then the second strand was to try and gather the community together and engage the community in the work we were doing, and to try and get them to sort of remember the river, really, because it sort of doesn't seem to figure in so many people's lives anymore than it did in past generations. So we started a campaign we put together the campaign to work with Wessex Water to campaign to reduce the number of spills that were going into our river and into the sea. And we also were very keen to raise funds to train volunteers in testing the water quality of the Char. And West Country Rivers Trust have been brilliant and helpful in that. Well, our other big aim, and something that's actually happening this May, so hold the date, May the 27th, is we're having a river dragon festival, which is basically an aim to bring the community together in an arts and culture event, but also with river facts as well, to try to just raise awareness of how clean water matters to everybody, to every living thing. And so that's all kicking off, where Sandra's been amazing at bringing the whole thing together. And our plan is to have a parade through the village, and then events in a local hall for the community. Sorry, I'm going on and on. So the question we were asked was, what's one thing that's worked best for you and your group in the process of working with the river? And we've got to say it's the gathering and sharing of information. So having raw data to hand when you approach water companies or any other body really makes a big difference to whether they're going to listen to you or not. And we've had some real successes already with Wessex Water because of data that we've gathered. And the other thing is sharing that information and learning from you lot. So thank you to all the river groups we've learned from. Connecting the Culm's been amazing. Vicky on the kit has been amazing. We're learning so much, and the aim is that we then toolkit it. We put it into what we know, we share. And so the whole thing just rolls on. So we're not all reinventing the wheel. Yeah, and thank you to Ian and to Nick Gray at the Wildlife Trust for everything they're doing as well. And the only thing we wanted to say in terms of difficulties is time. Because we're all volunteers, sometimes we find it's difficult to find exactly the right time or enough time to bring enough momentum to really make the progress we want to make that quickly. So I think funding, we're looking into funding streams. And I think in an ideal world, if every river group could have a coordinator who was funded to really keep the thing going and really push and research, I think it would, you know, I think in the future that's something that might well start to happen as the problem looms larger and larger.
Thank you, Donna.
I think that's me done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. A lot of helpful thoughts there for all the rivers, I think. So could I ask the River Lim? Is that Liz? You're muted at the moment. I think you're going to speak for the River Lim.
Yeah, I think Vicky might be here. Vicky Elcote. Is she here?
She is here, but I can't actually see her at the moment. So she's got a box up. So I think you're on.
Okay, I'm on. Okay.
Bad luck.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, we've been going for just over a year as well on the River Lim. It's a bit sad tonight in some ways, because we're actually part of the River Axe catchment area, so we're having to kind of work much more that way, and we're South West Water, so much as, you know, we really appreciate all our colleagues this side, it's slightly different for us, but that's what I think has been the most important thing for us, has been the fantastic support and information that we've got from lots of different groups. So I think that's really come across tonight as well. And one of the things has obviously been the local community, where we've got the CSI going. We're just going to start the Riverfly quite soon. And as Dana said, we've got fantastic, the data that we're getting and the information we're getting and the local observations are really what is fueling everything. South West Water, we're managing to have meetings with South West Water, the Environment Agency, the Town Council and the River Lim Action, which we formed. And that's been really good, because people seem to be really trying to work together. They're really trying to pool resources and pool information and try to address specific issues. So we found one specific issue where there's obviously been misconnections, and South West Water have been working really really seriously on that. The Environment Agency have started doing extra monitoring. The awful thing about that is that unusually, I think for quite a lot of you, we've got massively high levels of E. coli. And so that's creating a lot of additional challenges. And particularly as it's going on to the beaches, which are really important here. The Town Council have been really good, which somebody asked about council, and the Town Council have funded equipment, and they've also funded an ecological survey of the river for us, so we'll get some good baseline data. And I think that's probably just been wonderful, really, just fantastic. Been really lovely again working with local rivers, and AVRA, which is the Axe Vale River Association, who we are actually part of their catchment area. So that's the sort of positives, and it has been fantastic. And I think it's the challenge, I would say, is realism, actually, realism. So we're getting quite good at detecting the issues. One massive issue is that I think a lot of the infrastructure is failing. So we know the pumping stations, probably the upline sewage treatment works, all are probably not fit for purpose, with new developments going on, which is worrying. So we're getting massive discharges into the river. That would be the biggest challenge. I think the other thing is our kind of ambition is the other thing going alongside that of what we're trying to achieve. So we're trying to just get it all better. We're also trying to redesignate one of the bathing beaches, with the view that if we do redesignate it, the Environment Agency will take the river monitoring much, much more seriously to make the water quality good there. So,
thank you, Liz. I'm going to have to stop you there, I think, because
lovely. That's it. I've finished anyway. That's great.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. And we will have to keep to 2 or 3 minutes now if we're going to get all these wonderful rivers in. So is Kit Brook there? Kit Brook. Oh, there she is. Hello.
Hello. This is Vicky and Paul. We're a double act this evening. It's nice to
double act.
It's nice to see everyone. Yes, we're representing the Brook. We're, I think, probably one of the most far west of the rivers here this evening. We're right over the border into East Devon, and the Brook is 6 miles long. Its headwaters are in the Blackdown Hills. Most of the length of it flows through the Blackdown Hills, and we straddle 2 counties, that's Somerset and Devon. And the brook joins the River Axe at the special area of conservation. So our water is discharged straight into the Axe, right into an actually important area. We started doing West Country Rivers Trust river water monitoring quite a while back now, just because it looked something interesting to do, really. And that developed into, I think, a love of the river and a real interest in how we might make things better. In terms of what was one of the best things that happened, we joined the East Devon Catchment Partnership just over a year ago now, and we had a lucky break because I think we went to a meeting on Zoom just before Christmas, and there weren't very many people there, and we got an opportunity to talk a lot about our river, and got a very, very positive response from partnership members who were there. I think we're one of the few community groups who belong to the Catchment Partnership, and we couldn't recommend it highly enough. We think it's a great thing for community groups to do. And from that, we put forward a proposition that we would develop a catchment action plan co-created by the people of the place. So rather than outsiders come in and do something to us and our river and then clear off, we would work out what needed doing and develop our plan. So we've received funding from the Blackdown Hills and from the Environment Agency to get that work underway. We're in phase 1, trying to work out really what we're going to do. And part of that is about community engagement. So we've just had an absolutely fabulous community engagement event this weekend. We had 250 to 300 people in our community hall. It was amazing. I don't think we've quite recovered from it yet. But picking up something that Dominic said a while ago.
So we're losing you now and then, Vicky. You'll have to wind.
In terms of challenges.
We're losing.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we're losing you. Sometimes we're losing signal, or I am. Maybe it's just me.
Okay, I'll just keep it brief, just to say that the sort of the challenge really is about keeping the momentum going. It takes, picking up something Dana said, it takes a lot of energy and effort, a lot of volunteers. It's great, but it can be a lot of hard work.
Thank you, Vicky. That's great.
Probably
experience. Thank you so much. And can we have the River Winterborne?
Yeah, that's us in Martinstown, just to the 3 miles west of Dorchester. The River Winterborne rises in Winterborne Abbas and then joins the Froome at West Stafford. So it's only a very short length of river, and where it runs through Martinstown, it's more or less a kind of, it's been channeled, so it's just kind of banks and walls on either side. And I think mainly the attitude is about getting the water out as fast as possible. So there's great scope for naturalizing parts of the river higher up and so on to try and cope with the water. It does flood. It's been flooded of late. And we're really right at the very beginning. So we've just had approval for the test sites for West Country CSI. And they're being plotted on cartographer, so we're ready to go. We're waiting for the kits to come, and then we'll get going. We've got a team of people waiting to do that as part of Green Martinstown. And one of the other things we've begun to think about, and this was the question I was going to ask, relating to reed bed sewage systems. There's a small sewage system on the eastern end of the village, and obviously when it floods into the river. So and there's the space and the opportunity to do a reed bed system, but that's at very, very early stages, just an idea at the moment. So yeah, so we're ready to get going, keen to get going.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, River Winterborne. And that's great to hear. And let's hope we can have that reed bed question at the end as well. And River Asker and Mangerton, I think we have one person representing those two rivers.
That's me, Chuck.
Hello, Chuck. There you go, got you. Hello. Would you like to give us a couple of minutes on your rivers?
Yep. The Asker's the most westerly recognised chalk stream in the UK, whereas the Mangerton isn't. 3 years of results entered into the database of the National Anglers River Monitoring Initiative for 6 monitoring sites places the Asker and Mangerton within the top 15% of the very many rivers assessed, whereas the Environment Agency only ranks the Asker as moderate, mainly for the abundance of macrophytes which provide habitat for fish. The lack of the river plant is probably due to shading by trees that overhang the narrow river. I started on the CSI in April 21. We've now got 4 more registered monitors started in 2022. And that also includes the lower Brit. We've got some pollution, but have been working very well with the farmers, and we're doing quite well with that. There are sewer storm overflows which cause problems, but until you've got enough people monitoring, you don't get the thing. But that's where we've been really lucky on the Asker project. We've got trail cameras checking for otters. Water voles tend to be down at the bottom end in Bridport until the mink come through, and then they go. Main problem, weirs stopping the fish getting up. And we're plans for 23 to continue monitoring at the existing sites and work with other West Dorset rivers, and acquire and utilise mink monitoring rafts, and see if we can get the weir sorted out to help everybody going up. And we could provide a reference comparison support for efforts within Dorset, because we've been going quite a long time with all the help from Dorset AONB. And
that's fantastic. Sorry, Chuck. Thank you very much. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Quick, but
no, excellent. That's really concise and clear. Thank you. And that means it's time for River Corfe. Have we got Pete Floyd here, River Corfe?
Yes, hi there, folks.
There you go. Hello. Can you tell us something about River Corfe for a couple of minutes?
Yes, I'll be very brief. So again, I'm a bit of a fraud here. I know nothing about it. There are many more people on this call that know far more than me. I've just been nominated as a spokesman. So, you know, for example, we've got Helen Sumbler from Corfe, we've got Steve Olive from Dorset Warwickshire, Colleen Smith-Moore from Dorset Warwickshire, and Ian Duckworth. So a very brief summary entitled 3 questions. 1, works best, collaboration, partnerships, community. Based on Dominic's view on the Culm, I think one of our challenges is a strategic view. So great input, Dominic. I think a strategic view is maybe one of our challenges, and coordination and finding volunteers. And then the question, sources of cheap quality water test kits and funding of. That's it.
Thank you. Fantastic. So let's bring that question in at the end as well. Thank you, River Corfe. And River Sid is the River Jan Metcalf. There you are. Hello, Jan. Oh, you're still, well, yeah.
Hello, can everyone?
Hello, can hear you. Yes, you're on.
Yes, great. Well, good evening, everybody. And I'm going to be very, very brief and quick. I think, Nikki, we hold the record for being the furthest west, actually, but I don't know, maybe not.
Competition, yes.
But it's things that work well. Well, it's great working. It's great working as a team, and also networking with our sister rivers. Our group in the Sid Valley has been working now, monitoring as part of the CSI scheme for about 2.5 years now. And we monitor monthly in 12 locations across the valley. And strangely, our valley not only has the River Sid, which is pretty short at 10 kilometres, but we also have the Bickwell Brook, which discharges directly onto our beach, and we monitor that as well. One of the things that has worked well for us is same-day monitoring. Now, this is impossible to coordinate with a whole range of volunteers, but we've selected one tributary of particular significance for us, and we've tried to monitor where the agricultural bit ends and the urban bit starts, and then at the confluence with the Sid. So as a result of that, we can see that there are agricultural runoff problems, and there are also urban problems. And the agricultural runoff problem is very prominent in the summertime. We have a sort of a peak of phosphates in August, and that slowly tails off till November, and that is reflected both in the upper and lower readings. So that is something that's worked quite well for us.
Thank you.
Now, to one thing that remains a challenge, well, I mean, there's loads of things. The challenge is to select one thing, but really, I'd like to draw the group's attention to a challenge that we all face, and that's the issue of public accessibility to data. And I'm thinking, for example, of the South West Waters combined sewage overflow data. We have to regularly request this in order to get a full data set, the dates of spills, the duration, and rather than just seeing the yearly totals, because the data provided by South West Water on their website really is inaccessible, inadequate, and virtually unreadable. And so by requesting the detailed data, we were able to correlate the data with rainfall figures and discover that some of the spills were totally unrelated to heavy rain. So I think it would be a good idea if we all banded together and put pressure on for better data to be more accessible to the general public. And of course, this is an additional pressure for cleanups, and would enable South West Water to live up to their sort of glossy claims of the importance of public engagement. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joan. That's really useful and a good idea for collaboration. Thank you. One of the many, and what's coming up again and again is the importance of good data in all different areas somehow. So finally, Queenthorne Nature Watch. So Kim, could you give us a couple of minutes on your...
Yep, so thank you for inviting me to represent the Queenthorne Nature Watch group here this evening. We are a completely fledgling group. Our inaugural meeting was only 5 months ago. The stated aim of our group is to protect and promote biodiversity within the parish and to provide a research and monitoring tool which will enable more effective environmental decision making. Initiation of the group was prompted by a visible sharp decline in wildlife. And so our first action was a door knocking exercise where we simply went from door to door and asked people if they were concerned. Many residents of the village had noticed a loss of aquatic life in the streams, loss of birds and amphibians, and residents also shared concerns about badger culling, hunting with hounds, agrochemical contamination and destruction of breeding birds' nests. Several villagers had independently approached the relevant agencies, but no action had been taken. So listening to the views of residents was paramount in order to create community engagement. The obvious place to start was with the streams, as they flow through many of the gardens here. We are in an unusual situation in our parish because all of our waterways originate here, so we can't blame anyone else for our pollution, and our pollution becomes everyone else's pollution. We realised quite quickly that if we found there was a problem, we needed to evidence it in a way which could not be disputed. So we have initiated a combination approach to water testing, some of which the schemes have already been talked about tonight, with free training for members of the group, with a view to monthly data collection to record trends. Further to this, we managed to secure a piece of water testing equipment which allows us to take scientific measurements of pollutants in water. We took phosphate, nitrate and ammonia tests in order to establish a baseline. And when the same tests were run following heavy rain, we found that the levels of phosphates had risen, in one case 5 times the accepted safe amount. The hope is that by identifying any problems beyond doubt, will prompt a resolution to take action, as denial still seems to be prolific in some sections of the community. We believe that indisputable evidence is vital. We are in our very early stages, and it is feeling like there are a lot of bureaucratic obstacles which hinder the smooth formation of a community action group, but we are making progress. We have found the advice and support of other existing groups, some of which are here tonight, absolutely invaluable, and we are so grateful to benefit from their experience. We will soon have an online presence to put our findings out to the general public, and during our next public meeting we hope to make headway with water testing training, which will be loads of fun and incredibly inclusive, an all-round win-win situation. What is clear is that there is a will to reverse the downward trends in nature among the majority of people. It just seems so overwhelming that many people don't know where to start. But when one does look around, there are many active groups, many here tonight, which is great, and we recognise absolutely the benefit of networking. We think networking will be the key to long-term change. So we are delighted to be here with all you good folk this evening, and we'd like to say thank you to all of you for what you are doing, and keep up the good work. And so our pluses were: listen to people's concerns and tackle those issues first. Keep activities fun, light and inclusive. Have scientific data to back up your points. Be kind to everyone, especially to those with whom you disagree. And network as much as possible, as united we stand.
Kim, thank you very much. That seems to sum up much what this evening's been about. And yes, I'd really like to thank all the rivers at this point for their expertise, skill and sharing, just sharing that amount of information. It's a huge amount of information. And if you would like to either put in the chat your key points or email through to me what you'd like me to put into a general document for the rivers, then please do that. I think you all have my email address and I will do that bit of work. So we have a very few minutes left, but I would like to open the space again just for any comments from the people who, the panel. I'll call you the panel right now. If there's anything that you'd like to say in response to what you've heard. I'd like to first ask Colin if you've still got that question, because I promised you could ask it. So if you'd like to ask your question, and then we'll have a few moments left. And
are we going to hear from the panel first, or?
No, you go first. I'd like you to have your question.
Yeah, is there really, have any of the panel had any experience of reed bed sewage systems for a sizable village? In Martinstown, we're about 1,000 people. Is it feasible? Is it possible? Does it help the river system? And so on.
Very concise answer from anybody, please, of the panel. Yeah.
I've got no experience, so I can't really answer the question, Colin, I'm afraid, sorry.
Anybody?
Similar from me, really. I know that one of the benefits of working nationally now is I get to speak to all the rivers trusts and catchment partnerships. And I know Thames 21 have got some have been doing that sort of thing. So perhaps I can dig out some reports and send, or some sort of literature about that and send that over.
Thank you. That's great, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I think River Char Upper has got their hand up. And
we have. It's just a nudge to the three speakers, really, given everything you know and everything you've heard from the rivers here. If you've just got a suggestion of what more we could do, whether it's working together or working upwards or downwards, or I mean, given the enthusiasm and who's here, have you got anything to help us suggestion-wise?
It's a great question. Thank you.
I could maybe dive in on that one to start off. Some of you here, I think, are going to be at the event we're running this week, Making Rivers Better, which has really come out of the East Devon catchment area work, but it's opened up to a few more people, and it's an event to try and plan a network of all the groups working on rivers, so that people can collaborate better. And the meeting is actually to explore how could this network work, how could it be effective. But I can imagine that the learning and the kind of approaches that we develop there could easily be extended out across into Dorset. There's no reason that network couldn't extend its tentacles and bring together an ever larger group of people. So I think that everyone's talked, a lot of people have talked about the power of networking and the need to do it and how inspiring that is. And I think we do, it's a tough road we're on, and I think we can all gather energy and information and support from each other and make a bigger difference as a result.
Thank you, Dominic. Simon or Ian? Yes, Simon?
Yeah, if I can add to that. I mean, we've heard it several times today, collaboration is key. What you're doing is fantastic, and you're building a community, a movement of movements, which we know is what's needed in this space for sure. So I would say keep going. It can seem it is a long road and it's hard work, but help is on its way. So the Casco project is evidence of that. So the importance of what you're doing is being recognised nationally, and significant investment is being put in by people to improve the landscape, to provide tools to get you able to collect better data of more things, and to make sure that that data is embedded into the system. But keep up the pressure as well. I can send a nice report as well that we're using a lot since I arrived at the Rivers Trust, that was written by Earthwatch for the Environment Agency, and it's about the role of citizen science monitoring in UK fresh waters. And there's a lovely diagram there about the impact of volunteer monitoring. Whilst a lot of people will be thinking we'll collect data and then we'll give that to the Environment Agency and they'll act on it, that might happen, but it's not the easiest way to get change. So by kind of cluing yourselves up on what's good for our rivers and what isn't, and by telling your friends and by telling people on social media, by getting together in groups like you're all doing, you start to change the landscape. You start to hassle your councils, give South West Water a hard time, give your MP a hard time, because it is making a difference. That's the most encouraging thing. Whilst it can be depressing working in conservation sometimes, things are changing.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you. I think we will close the evening with that, because, or at least the formal part of the evening, because we've reached, amazingly, is it 8:45? Yes. Okay, so it's 8:45, and I would like to say, first of all, once again, thank you to Simon, to Ian and to Dominic for everything you've brought to this meeting, and then also to thank the Rivers for sharing their experience so far. And then to thank the rest of you for coming along and supporting this meeting. The presentations and
I've lost sound. Is that just me?
Yes, I've lost you too, Sandra.
It's a sign.
Back, all is forgiven.
Can you hear us, Sandra? Okay, I'm afraid we've lost you. Sorry, I don't do lip reading.
I'm going to step in while Sandra tries to sort that out, to finish saying thank you to everybody, and to say that for anyone who wants to stay on, she's going to be here if she can get things going. I'll be here, and there's time and space for further conversation for anybody who wants that. I put the note of the Dorset Can Rivers page in the chat, and that will be one way to stay in touch with any further developments of this group. But it's, I think, fair to say it's certainly not Dorset Can's intention to try and recreate or duplicate anything, all of the other things that are going on. It's just an opportunity to get people together for this discussion. So do please stay on. I'm just going to see if in those messages there's anything else. No. So let's end the formal bit now. Thank you again to everyone who's come, and those who want to stay on, please do.